try this again. If you think that DMC Netflix is a good and accurate representation of Devil May Cry's essence, then you are not a true Devil May Cry fan. This is not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of fact. If you have no qualms watching as one of the most recognizable and beloved characters in the gaming industry is cut down, disrespected, and humiliated simply because you enjoy all the pretty full colors and some of the music choices made, then you are not worthy of being a part of this fan base. Oh yes, I am justifying gatekeeping as it's the only way to keep the standards for this franchise high, because had we allowed all of you simpletons free reign, DMC Devil May Cry would have replaced the classic series entirely and we would have never gotten DMC 5, which, depending on who you ask, is another tragedy, but that'll be a video for another day. I know, I understand, it's quite a bold statement to make. What I'm saying is not very inclusive, but as far as I'm concerned, inclusivity is a euphemism for infiltration. When the barbarians are at the gate, you don't simply allow them in, you fight them off. If you think that people like myself are going to make it easy for all of you tourists to come in and ruin our good old time, you've got another thing coming. I thought I'd be able to sit on the sidelines and walk off into the sunset after DMC 5 release, but instead I had to hear that this community has been usurped by troons, degenerates, and activists who wouldn't know the difference between a jump cancel, a switch buffer, and a stinger if their estrogen pills depended on it. I'm not gonna lie, boys, I am pretty disappointed in all of you. I thought I left this fanbase in good hands, and this is what you do with it? An entire fanbase who used to go into granular detail about combat mechanics, gameplay strategies, and character motivations has diluted into a cesspool of self-obsessed mutants solely focused on debating as to whether or not Lady and Nico are lesbians. Genius. Current year politics do not belong in Devil May Cry because this is a franchise that deals with far higher level concepts than mere sexuality or political affiliation, but we will be getting into that a little later. I have a feeling that many longtime fans of the franchise will disagree with my next point, and I can't say that they are not justified in their view. However, I do believe that there is still a chance for us to turn things around so that Devil May Cry as an IP can remain pure, genuine, and authentic to its roots. With this video, I don't solely intend to critique Beta May Soy Netflix because Addie Shanqueer's DMC is simply a symptom of a much more prominent malignancy that must be brought to light. Additionally, since Shanqueer and his team decided to heavily politicize this series, that means that me using my political paradigm to critique it is fair game, which means that you're going to get some of the more edgy takes that you can find on this side of the internet, so I hope you're ready. If I haven't scared away all of the tourists in the audience by this point, then this should help with getting rid of the last few stragglers. Yes, I am the grand authority on all things Devil May Cry, and outside of my subscriber base and a very select few YouTube channels, there's almost no one who does it better. If you think you are more skilled at Devil May Cry than I am, you are wrong. If you think you know more about Devil May Cry than I do, you are wrong. If you think you understand Devil May Cry better than I do, you are wrong. Now that the preamble is out of the way, let's finally get this show started, shall we?
What the hell is this?
Subversive, disrespectful, tone-deaf, juvenile, and shallow is how I describe Addie Shanqueer's back alley abortion Beta May Soy Netflix series. Outside of a few character names and designs, there's almost nothing here that resembles Devil May Cry in terms of tonality, theme, and characterization. In practice, this Netflix abomination is a much less competently written and directed fusion of Ninja Theory's DMC Devil May Cry and Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, with a few choice elements from the original Devil May Cry series thrown in for good measure. Doing his very best Tam Tam impression, Addie Shanqueer takes the world of Devil May Cry and dilutes it for the sake of regurgitating a few tired leftist talking points that were already considered intellectually bankrupt 20 years ago. I've said it before and I think it needs to be restated here. Devil May Cry, disregarding Ninja Theory's reboot, is a series that deals with higher level concepts such as identity, legacy, fate, lineage, family, will, responsibility, and duty, as opposed to the vacuous political concerns of the modern day wokies such as right-wing extremism, how jingoism is wrong, why hegemony is racist, and yes, that is a proper pronunciation of the word hegemony, and how humanity is somehow the true source of ultimate evil in the world. At its core, DMC has always been a story about the masculine imperative to find your place in the world by honoring the legacy that your forefathers left behind for you, while creating a legend and legacy of your own to pass on into the future. Whereas Beta May Soy Netflix is a story about how bigotry, xenophobia, and ideological possession can lead to heinous acts against potentially innocent people. It's puerile, sophomoric, grade school, virtue signaling trash that's about as deep and complex as an episode of Sesame Street. This isn't simply an alternative take of Devil May Cry that wants to be more grounded and realistic. This is ideological subversion meant to demoralize fans of the franchise and inculcate them into wokeism. What exactly is wokeism? It's leftist orthodoxy, secular sharia, or the cult of live and let live, where victimhood is equivalent to virtue. In other words, it's a religious sect of weak dysgenic mutants who are attempting to steal the reins of power from the strong, beautiful, and brave by eroding our most sacred beliefs and traditions through incessant spurgery. You can see this exemplified in various pieces of modern media where much beloved and well-established masculine archetypes are degraded so as to invert the natural order. It isn't a coincidence that this show's depiction of Dante, one of the most powerful, charismatic, and badass masculine figures in entertainment, is repeatedly beaten down, humiliated, outmatched, and outgunned by a young girl.
How are the prisoners?
A little too fucking comfortable.
I have to be the one who stops him.
Yeah, fuck that.
You shot my leg! No, that it's mine!
All yours, Hellblood.
We've seen this pattern plenty of times in modern media where classically masculine archetypes are figuratively sacrificed to the cult of woke by toxically feminine female characters in order to deconstruct the patriarchy or some other such nonsense. I want to emphasize this point by making it clear to everyone watching this video who's not very familiar with the source material that there is no circumstance, and I mean none, where Lady or any other human for that matter would be able to gain the upper hand on Dante.
That man. Did you kill him?
So what if I did?
Woo!
Ooh, I love a fast woman.
Shut up!
Even Dante at his most inexperienced back during the DMC3 days could only be rivaled by his twin brother Virgil, Beowulf the gatekeeper of the Temina Gru, Arkham wielding a warped and unstable portion of Sparta's power, and of course the demon god himself, Mundus. Dante being outwitted, outmaneuvered, and outgunned by Lady is akin to Superman getting his ass handed to him by a mosquito. It completely shatters suspension of disbelief and strips the character of his dignity and identity. In order to circumvent Dante's immeasurable abilities, the showrunners created an Achilles heel for him to be susceptible to, an anti-demon ammunition which explodes upon impact when touching demon blood. However, if this were a true and lore-accurate depiction of the Dante that we all know and love, these bullets would have zero effect on him. This lazy plot device allows Lady to consistently abuse Dante throughout the series, as for whatever reason, he's particularly susceptible to the explosions caused by these blasts. The true Dante has one of the most powerful healing factors in fiction. His healing factor doesn't work like Wolverine's or Deadpool's, where the greater the damage sustained, the slower the recovery process. It works nearly instantaneously, and Dante tends to use this fact to his advantage by allowing his enemies to quote-unquote damage him just for the sake of style points. In addition to his healing factor, Dante also has super speed, super strength, clairvoyance, elemental powers, multiple devil triggers, the ability to fly, the ability to stop time entirely, the ability to gain mastery over any weapon he touches, amongst many others that I won't bother listing here. Dante has also defeated entities that have created entire universes with little to no effort, mostly seeing them as minor annoyances as opposed to legitimate challenges. The idea that a normal girl in an augmented battlesuit with a few explosive bullets could rival Dante's overwhelming godhood is beyond laughable and is a complete assassination of not only Dante's but also Lady's character. By botching the characters this way, the writers have undermined the crucial role that Lady serves in Dante's development toward the path to becoming a true hero and legendary Dark Knight. Outside of a few small similarities in their backstory, this insufferable girl boss doesn't resemble Lady whatsoever. In the source material, Lady is hell-bent on getting revenge against her father, Arkham, after he sacrifices his wife, Lady's mother, Kalina Ann, in order to gain demonic abilities and acquire the power of Sparta for his own. In many ways, the external conflict between Lady and her father, Arkham, parallels Dante's internal conflict between himself and the demonic lineage that his father, Sparta, passed down to him. The way that these themes of familial conflict intertwine throughout DMC3 is masterfully executed, allowing both Dante and Lady to reflect one another in a way that doesn't feel forced and artificial. Lady genuinely hates what Arkham has become, but she still loves him despite all of the evil that he's inflicted upon beyond the world, even shedding tears for him when he finally meets his untimely demise. Lady herself is incredibly skilled, strong-willed, and capable for a human, but that's all she is, a human. Most of her true strength lies in her will and her sense of responsibility toward justice. She knows that she's in over her head and could potentially lose her life, but her unwavering spirit won't allow her to back down from achieving her goals.
I'm responsible for all this mess.
Responsible? Does it bother you that much?
He's my father. Besides, who else can undo what he's done? A demon like you wouldn't understand.
Father and family, huh?
It's this spirit which causes Dante to slowly change over the course of the story. Very much like Sparta before him, Dante finally awakens to justice because of Lady's actions, and despite her initial callous attitude toward him, Dante also begins to have a positive impact upon Lady, slowly chipping away at her harsh exterior and allowing her to embrace her vulnerability and trust him enough to help her carry the burden that she feels toward righting the wrongs of her father.
Quite frankly, at first, I didn't give a damn. But because of you, I know what's important now. I know what I need to do.
Just in case the Netflix writers are listening, this is how a proper positive male-female dynamic should be portrayed in media. The way that these two characters transform one another over the course of Devil May Cry 3 is a rare depiction of how positive relationships between men and women can work at mitigating each individual's weaknesses while magnifying their strengths. Dante has immeasurable power tainted by an internal lack of self-identity, whereas Lady has an immeasurable will tainted by a self-destructive thirst for vengeance. Through her interactions with Dante, a half-demon hybrid, she ironically learns to trust in humanity again, giving her a chance to fully embrace her femininity and playful side. This is the reason that in every subsequent game after DMC3, she comes across as a far more mellow and lighthearted person who's no longer possessed by a thirst for revenge. Through Dante's example, she learns to see the overwhelming good that humanity has to offer, in direct contrast to the evil that she witnessed at the hands of her father. Compare this meaningful bond with the relationship that the two characters share with one another in the Netflix series, or lack thereof. Lady, after having tragically lost her parents to demonic influence, makes it her life's purpose to join a special forces group of DEI demon hunters directed by the US government. At the direction of the US Vice President, she and her team exterminate demons wherever they arise, and unfortunately for Dante, he is their next target, as his blood and Mother's Amulet have the capacity to destroy the wall between both the human and demon worlds. Since the White Rabbit is particularly interested in getting his hands on Dante, Lady and her team are tasked with intercepting him before he can become a pawn in the Rabbit's plot. After outsmarting, outgunning, humiliating, and capturing Dante, Lady learns that he's some sort of hybrid, who seems to be far different than most of the demons she's faced in the past. Despite the fact that there's something unique about Dante, Lady's ingrained racism toward demons doesn't allow her to place any kind of faith in him. The relationship between Dante and Lady remains antagonistic throughout the entire series, where Dante seemingly develops Stockholm Syndrome toward her as she continues to berate, gaslight, and mistreat him. There's no instance where Dante and Lady have a heart-to-heart in order to understand one another, because Lady sees Dante as a danger to humanity that must be neutralized. Every time Dante tries to get Lady to open up to him, he's met with nothing but hatred, snark, and hostility, even by the very end of the show when she learns from the heckin' wholesome demon refugees that #not all demons are bad. Instead of having the characters learn from one another and grow into their best selves like in DMC3, Lady's supposed growth stems from the revelation that there's a subset of quote-unquote nice demons who are used as a direct analog by the writers for real-world refugees, asylees, and immigrants. After learning the truth about the heckin' wholesome demon refugees, Lady becomes somewhat hesitant to eviscerate them on sight, but still remains incredibly resentful and condescending toward Dante, who's been nothing but nice toward her. That's what you get for simping for a girl with daddy issues, am I right, Dante? No worries, bro. Happens to the best of us. Believe me. The primary concern that I had when I first heard the announcement for the show was how Dante was going to be portrayed, because he's a character who's incredibly misunderstood by most casual fans, writers, and even the game developers from time to time. On the surface, it would seem as though Dante is just some brash, dumb, loudmouth character who makes random jokes and is only interested in being a wacky woohoo pizza man, but nothing can be further from the truth. While the over-the-top nature of Dante is an important part of who he is, it's also an element of his personality that he uses to keep people from getting too close to him and uncovering the darkness that he's buried inside. One of the best examples of this darkness revealing itself is when Dante is betrayed by Trish toward the end of DMC1.
Dante! Dante, why did you save my life?
Because you look like my mother. Now get out of my sight. The next time we meet, it won't be like this.
Dante!
Don't come any closer, you devil! You may look like my mother, but you're nowhere close to her. You have no soul. You have the face, but you'll never have her fire!
This is a crucial element of Dante's personality that Shanquir and his team of midwit writers failed to realize, and instead was replaced with a Deadpool-inspired superhero who is about as stupid as he is useless. In this series, Dante is consistently shown to be out of his depth, being captured multiple times, repeatedly getting his ass handed to him by characters that his game counterpart could obliterate without a second thought, continuously is mocked for his idiocy, and of course is ultimately being used as a pawn for both the White Rabbit and the Vice President's machinations. Dante has little to no agency or story arc in this series, and is at best a plot device that's traded between the two true lead characters of this story, Lady and the White Rabbit. Contrast this with how Dante is portrayed in the source material, an incredibly layered, thoughtful, intelligent, and pure character who has a deep-seated rage that he doesn't understand how to properly channel. Both Dante and his twin brother Virgil share the same sense of pain, loss, and rage. However, one twin decides to focus his aggression externally by embracing his demonic heritage, attempting to reshape the world around him through power alone, whereas the other twin decides to focus his aggression internally by rejecting his demonic heritage and shunning the entire world in the process. Had this series used DMC3 and its mangas as a template to build off of, we could have had one of the greatest stories in the franchise's history that delves into the consequences of how a single event can cause two nearly identical people to take drastically different paths in life, very much echoing Virgil's sentiments at the end of DMC5.
That day, if our positions were switched, would our fates be different? Would I have your life and you mine?
This would have allowed us to explore not only the concepts of fate and free will, but also the religious idea of original sin and what it means to live a virtuous life through Dante and Virgil's struggle against their demon and human natures. There is so much potential here to craft some truly layered and exciting stories, but instead, Shanquir and his team decided to use this franchise as a soapbox to air their grievances toward not only America and American exceptionalism, but also masculinity, religiosity, stoicism, and conservationalism. In this dumpster fire of a TV series, we get one of the most ham-fisted, awkward, and hilarious critiques of Bush-era conservatism as well as Trumpism that I've ever seen. It gets so ridiculous, in fact, that the vice president ends up declaring war on the demon world and claims it as an American territory. I'm sorry. I'm sure that it was also just a happy coincidence that Vice President Gigachad here, played by the late Kevin Conroy, also happens to be a direct personification of all the things that these leftist degenerates fear the most. He's a pious, masculine, based, and faithful Christian white man who has no qualms with using his position of authority to enact God's will, and for all intents and purposes, every single action that he takes throughout this show is justified and would make Doomguy proud.
Freaking interdimensional invaders, okay? I'll just say it, make fun of me all you want on CNN or wherever, but everyone already innately knows this. These people are not freaking humans, okay? Hillary Clinton is a goddamn demon.
Outside of the Evanescence track and some of the classic theme remixes, he is far and away the only thing about this show that is worthy of praise. He's the leader of a secret government organized group of demon slayers, based. He pantomimes the sitting closeted sodomite president of the United States to do his bidding, based. When Lady starts to have a change of heart and attempts to spare the demon refugees, he declares war and carpet bombs their entire civilization, based. He plants the American flag in hell and decides to use its resources to power the United States, incredibly based. And of course he has a badass voice and a shoot first ask questions later policy toward the demon question, which is immeasurably based. Anyone with testosterone levels above a prepubescent girl will love this character, as it once again goes to show that the left's approximation of evil consists of order, discipline, strength, religiosity, faith, and bravery. One of the most unfortunate consequences that wokeism has had upon modernity, especially with regards to the entertainment sphere, is the idea that good and evil do not have their own ontology grounded by objective standards. From the leftist purview, good and evil are simply perspectives that change depending on the paradigm from which you view the world. This is the exact reason why millennial writers tend to fetishize the concept of the other who have been oppressed, whilst ironically demonizing the concept of the superior and those who do the oppressing. This is standpoint theory in action, an idea which argues that knowledge itself is shaped by the social positions of the individuals who produce it, and that by placing emphasis on the knowledge collected by quote-unquote marginalized groups, we can gain crucial insights into the social structures of society. Standpoint theorists make the assertion that these marginalized groups have an epistemically advantaged position in the world, which allows them to understand social dynamics as a holistic, because they exist at the ground level of the social hierarchy. So in the case of Beta Mesoi, the marginalized group with the epistemically advantaged position would be the demon refugees, giving them some sort of inherent moral claim to their demands to cross the border illegally. For anyone with two brain cells to rub together, this idea falls apart in multiple ways, the primary of which being that simply asserting that a group's position is epistemically advantaged does not actually make it so. The only way to demonstrate whose position is epistemically advantaged is by gathering knowledge from all potential positions and coming up with an objective means of evaluating each data set that you've gathered. You can't simply assert that one position is greater than another based off of your subjective metrics without justifying why the metrics themselves are a standard that all of us should accept as an accurate measurement for quote-unquote epistemic advantage. Further, since proponents of standpoint theory also tend to believe in moral and cultural relativism, the theory ends up crumbling under the weight of its own contingencies. How can any one position actually be advantaged if they're all equally valid from a relativistic purview? For all of their theorizing and rampant conjecture, what these zealots can't seem to conceive of is the idea that sometimes the weak deserve to be shunned, sometimes the other deserves to be oppressed, sometimes the disenfranchised deserve to be ignored, and sometimes cultures deserve to be eliminated. This is going to sound like insanity to a lot of you, but if morality is built upon subjective standards that have no objective basis, that would entail that all things are permitted, meaning that you couldn't justifiably say that anything is actually wrong or right outside of an appeal to your own dogmatic preferences. This is the reason that stories which attempt to reflect this ideology are plagued with internally inconsistent and contradictory moral claims that ultimately leave us feeling empty, because if no one is truly right, then no one is truly wrong. So what in the hell does any of this matter anyway? Nowhere is this relativistic theme more grossly communicated than through the primary antagonist of Beta Mesoi Netflix, the White Rabbit, who follows the trend of the rest of the cast in being almost nothing like his source material counterpart. As appalling as the characterization for Dante, Lady, and Virgil are in this series, with Virgil's brief screen time showing him to be a willing servant of Mundus, which is a complete betrayal of everything that he stands for in the games, the White Rabbit somehow fares even worse because his motivations completely undermine the very themes that this franchise are built upon. As opposed to his manga counterpart, who seems to be guiding both Dante and Virgil to retrace Sparta's footsteps for his own nefarious purposes, in Beta May Cry, the White Rabbit is little more than a misanthropic, bleeding heart liberal who wants to tear down the wall that Sparta created between the human and demon world so that all the heckin' wholesome demon refugees can have a chance at a better life for themselves. This entire plotline is antithetical to the world of Devil May Cry because the demons in the DMC universe are objectively evil entities who almost never have the capacity to understand concepts such as empathy, morality, and virtue. Sparta himself is the only exception to this rule, who somehow awakened a sense of justice, compassion, and love without an outside influence guiding him along. Demons such as Trish, Lucia, and Bradley seemingly had the capacity to understand what it meant to have a soul, but their souls needed to be awakened by an outside source, whereas Sparta still remains the sole example of a demon who grew a conscience organically. We also see that characters who can maintain the perfect balance between human compassion and demonic wrath are blessed with incredible power that can surpass the limits of both their respective species. The entire series is about this underlying Jungian theme of shadow integration, where characters such as Dante, Virgil, and Nero are all struggling with how to find harmony between their shadowy demonic animus and their human egoistic personas. Expect an entire video on this concept in the future, as even though I think psychology is mostly nonsense, some of the concepts which stem from it can be incredibly efficient at telling great stories and building yourself into an amazing person. So let's get back to the point. This is an idea that is covered multiple times throughout the series, where the character who best harmonizes their various drives ends up being blessed with incredible powers by using the human will as a catalyst. This is how Dante surpassed Virgil in DMC 3, overwhelmed Mundus in DMC 1, and obliterated the Argosax in DMC 2. He quite literally spells out this fact during his battle with Agnes in DMC 4.
How can there be such a difference between us?
You surrendered your humanity. It's that simple.
But you are not human, so why am I inferior?
You assume humans are weak. Okay, yeah, their bodies lack the physical ability of a demon. But humans possess something that demons don't.
This idea is also echoed by Nero during the final boss of DMC 4.
The power of Sparta! Why won't you give me strength? Am I not worthy?
Never could take those legends too literally. But I do know that Sparta had a heart. A heart that could love another person.
A human. That is what you lack.
Additionally, this is the reason that Nero ascended at the end of DMC5.
I couldn't protect Credo. To this day, I hate myself for not having enough strength. But this time is different. I swear! I'm not letting you die!
If an entire race of demons somehow awakened to justice, compassion, and love the same way that Sparta did, they would be some of the most formidable demons in the entire demon world and would likely have the capacity to rule it themselves. Making them into these weak, meek, and fragile humanoids who need to sneak over the border to live peacefully is honestly ridiculous and undermines the importance of Sparta's awakening, making his rebellion that much less poignant and unique in the grand scheme of DMC's universe. Additionally, their integration of human characteristics works at subverting the true source of ultimate strength in the DMC universe, which is the human will. By presenting the idea that demons on a wide scale may be capable of assimilating human nature, the writers are reinforcing the ludicrous leftist notion of tabula rasa, or the blank slate. This is a theory which asserts that humans are born as empty slates. All knowledge, traits, and behavior come entirely from experience and environmental factors, completely ignoring any genetic component that may be involved in human development. This is how we end up with people who believe that inequalities themselves must be a function of an unfair system because, according to blank slate theorists, literally all of us have the same capacity for greatness if placed under the proper conditions. If the conditions are what create unwelcomed outcomes for sets of people, then the conditions must necessarily be tweaked so as to create the optimal circumstances for all sets of people. With regard to Beta Mesoi, the demons themselves are meant to represent a people who are victims of environmental factors which have forced them to become savages, not due to some innate underlying genetic components or inbuilt ontology, but solely due to the circumstances that they were unfortunate enough to be born into. In other words, these people are exactly like us, but our lack of empathy for them is what turns them into monsters because, as I pointed out earlier, according to these people, there is no such thing as good and evil, simply paradigms and perspectives that conflict with one another. If you want to see this notion get completely eviscerated, I suggest that you look into studies done on twins who were separated at birth, John Money's tragic experiments upon a young boy who had a botched circumcision, as well as the replication crisis that plagues all of the soft sciences. The reason that this entire concept is so pernicious, especially when injected into a series like DMC, is because Devil May Cry is ultimately a story about taming our inherent savage natures so as to point them toward virtue and righteousness instead of allowing them to devour us through vice and hedonism. The demons in the Netflix series are not struggling against their natures because they are portrayed as a group of people who are simply fighting for their own freedom. They're just a set of misunderstood misfits on one side of a war that would easily be solved if we all just had a little more empathy, compassion, and understanding for one another. The entire moral framework for this story can be summed up in this one image. Come on guys, let's just all hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and coexist together because when it really comes down to it, aren't we all just one giant family in the end? No, we're not. I haven't come across and experienced that packages such a naive and childish idea into such a pretentious and self-aggrandizing package since Neil Cuckman decided to lecture us about how revenge bad, guys, in The Last of Us 2. Here's a word to the wise. If you're gonna be a pretentious elitist asshole, at least be able to back it up with some kind of substance, you know? Wait a minute, why are you guys looking at me like that? So anyway, the White Rabbit is depicted as this tragic anti-hero whose heart was in the right place but ultimately became the casualty of his own hatred and need for vengeance. I feel like I'm talking about The Last of Us 2 again. Isn't that interesting? As far as I'm concerned, his heart was not in the right place and this character is a massive retard because, as we all know, demons will say and do anything to get into your good graces. How does he know that these demons are actually good people? Just because they treated him nice when he was a kid and grew up with them? Absurd. For all we know, these demons could be sleeper cell agents infiltrating the human world and waiting for the perfect moment to strike at the behest of Mundus. My prescription is to glass their entire civilization, steal their resources, and profit. Because as we all know, that is the American way. The issues with this show run far deeper than a few light disagreements with characterization, themes, and plot. This show, down to its very core, is completely at odds with the soul of the Devil May Cry franchise and reads like a bad parody. If I were to be charitable, I'd say that Shanqueer and his staff have a fundamental misunderstanding of the foundations that the world of DMC are reliant upon, but that would imply that they have any actual understanding or care for the source material whatsoever. Further, it would also entail that they had pure intentions when going into this project, which is clearly not the case considering how overtly agenda-driven this series turned out to be. In actuality, what I'd say is that Shanqueer and those of his ideological persuasion, very much like the demons in the DMC source material, are solely preoccupied with corruption, inversion, and self-aggrandizement at the expense of any kind of genuine sincerity. Projects like these are created by envious dilettantes who have failed to become relevant members of the ruling class due to their lack of discipline, talent, and competency. They can't create something that can effectively stand on its own, so instead, they look to destroy properties that other people hold near and dear to their hearts to satiate their egos in a desperate cry for attention. This show might look like Devil May Cry, but it's nowhere close to it. It has no soul. It may have the face, but it will never have the fire. Feeding off of and betraying the goodwill of hardcore fans like us who are willing to give it a sincere chance, hoping to watch one of our favorite characters gain access to a brand new audience. I'd say that sincerity itself is what makes Devil May Cry such an endearing and fun series to be a fan of. Despite how over the top this franchise can be, it always plays it straight. There are no winks and nudges toward the audience, there are no fourth wall breaks, there are no ironic style Marvel tier quips pointing out the absurdity of the situations that the characters find themselves in. There is only earnestness and passion for better or worse, and that's the primary reason that Shanqueer and his team have ultimately failed with their adaptation, because they are incapable of authenticity. As was the case with Ninja Theory and DMC Devil May Cry, we are once again at a crossroads where we have the power to make this project a success or assure its failure. It has already been announced that a Season 2 is in the works, however both Season 1 and 2 were greenlit at the same time and were essentially developed as one giant project. A small preview for Season 2 was released in the music video for Afterlife by Evanescence, which shows Dante after being released from cryosleep trick shooting some new guns that are likely ebony and ivory prototypes. The reason that I say that they're likely prototypes is because he's actively reloading them, unlike ebony and ivory from the games. Engraved on the side of the guns is the name Tony Redgrave, which should be very familiar to longtime fans of the Devil May Cry franchise. In this series, it seems as though Tony Redgrave will be Dante's codename, as he will likely be working under Vice President Giga Chad with Lady as his handler. So brace yourselves for another round of feminist-leaning virtue signaling propaganda that further attempts to deconstruct one of the greatest characters in fiction. Don't get too bent out of shape about it though. Season 2's announcement says nothing about the potential success or failure of Season 1, so the best way to make sure that Shanqueer and his staff of myopic mongoloids are out of the job is through pitiless indifference. Projects like these live off of controversy. They feed off of your time and attention, so simply starve them by disengaging entirely. Don't watch any new trailers, don't listen to any new interviews, don't read any tweets, and don't even bother thinking about Season 2 from here on out. Moving forward, I'll be treating this series as though it never existed, and if you're looking forward to me making a video on Season 2, then you are going to be sorely disappointed. Outside of this video's comment section, as well as my live streams, this will be the last time that I ever talk about Beta May Soy Netflix, and I urge all of you to do the same. If you don't want to see Devil May Cry become another victim of ideological subversion, then you must be diligent, uncompromising, and courageous, especially when it comes to gatekeeping. For anyone wondering if I can just stop complaining and let people enjoy things, the answer is no. No, I can't. If you didn't want to deal with this kind of quote-unquote toxicity, then Shanqueer should have made a better TV show. Don't blame me and the people who share my view for having high standards. Blame Shanqueer for bastardizing Devil May Cry, and blame yourselves for having such low standards that you'd accept any kind of slop that's placed in front of you. Your terrible taste is your own issue and has nothing to do with me or the people who think like me. I'd rather see Devil May Cry as an IP completely die off than for this kind of low-effort garbage to become the standard for the franchise's quality moving forward. If it's not a high-quality product, then it's not worthy of our support. We did this during the DMC 2 days, we did this during the DMC Devil May Cry days, and now we're doing it again here. And by the way, every single time that we've done this, it has always led to some of the best projects in the franchise's history. After the DMC 2 backlash, we were given what was essentially the greatest game in the Devil May Cry franchise, DMC 3. After the DMC Devil May Cry backlash, we were given what many consider to be one of the greatest action games of all time, DMC 5. Now imagine what kind of incredible series we could get if we continued to reject Shanqueer's back alley abortion. Is this finally starting to click with some of you people, or no? Okay, well, you can't say I didn't try. If you are going to take my recommendation to avoid this Netflix series, but still want to experience an incredible Devil May Cry story, then simply go back and play through Devil May Cry 3. I assure you that you will not be disappointed, and you will have the time of your life. With all that being said, I want to thank you kindly for watching, and if you haven't already done so, be sure to give this video a like or dislike so that I can ride the glorious tide of the YouTube algorithm. The name is Atrophy of Soul. Until next time, be sure to take care of yourselves, have a fine day, and God bless. Adios.
Volume 3, available now. Incredible art, cerebral stories, solve the mystery. Purchase your copy today. Link in the description. The Hollow Raven, Volume 3. By Lindsay Lee. You will know the fear.
What made it even better is that they were playing American Idiot by Green Day while they were bombing the demon refugees. Oh, I could not believe it. I could not believe what I was watching, dude. Could not believe it. So anyway, at the very end of these... at the very end of the show, Virgil shows up. He shows up to liberate the demon refugees from the cages. Oh my god. I cannot believe what I watched, dude. I cannot believe it. I can't believe that it's real. I couldn't believe it, man. Oh. Oh, it's so bad. For the sake of full transparency, this section of the original video actually included a jab as well as a joke at the expense of the Sphere Hunter. Unfortunately, I decided to pull the joke because I don't want to risk this video being taken down for a third time, and I'm not gonna lie, the joke was pretty edgy. It was funny, it was very funny, but it was very edgy as well, and considering all of the other edgy stuff I've already said in this video, I'm clearly on thin ice with YouTube, so I would rather not risk pushing the envelope any further. Not as though the joke was the most important part of this video or anything, so it's not like you're missing that much, but I mean, you are kind of missing a little bit because it was funny. But anyway, there is still a joke at the very end. It's not as good as the Sphere Hunter joke, but Sphere Hunter is featured in this final joke, so hope you enjoy it. Adios.
Well, I won it. You're trespassing on my property. You didn't win shit in my yard. Wait. All of you.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that? Get everybody out of my yard.